As you've heard, my name is Jeremy Lister, and I live now in Yorkshire at Shibden Hall with my family, what remains of them. I've visited your town many years ago, twice actually, all in one day. It was, 45 years ago. But what a day, my God. We had been in Canada and wintered there for 2 years, and were returning to Quebec City, thinking to winter there, when message arrived from Boston, from General Gage, that we were to transport to Boston immediately. We arrived in Boston at the end of November, and the townspeople, I must say, were not terribly pleased with us. It was difficult, but by springtime it had gotten even worse, and message came from London that it was time to strike back. Enough of this. And an expedition was mounted to seize the arms in a town called Concord. I was not supposed to go that day. I was not there to march. It was the light infantry and the grenadiers of all of the regiments in Boston at the time. But I roomed with several of them, so I followed them down to the waterfront on Back Bay and noticed that Captain Parsons of the light infantry of the 10th was rather put out, and I asked him why. He said that a certain Officer Hamilton had called in sick, and everyone knew that it was a ruse, that it wasn't that at all. But I, for the honor of the regiment, put myself in his place, over the objections of our colonel, but I did it. And by that accident, I went on the march. We soon crossed the water over to the town of Cambridge and began up the road. But soon as we were on the road to Concord and Lexington, we could hear the shots in the night. We could hear the bells. We could see them moving through the night, and we knew that secrecy had been lost. Colonel Smith, our colonel, turned to Major Pitcairn of the Marines, told him to take 6 companies of light infantry and march like the wind and get to Concord, get to the 2 bridges beyond Concord, seize them, and prevent anyone from coming across. We headed off into the night at nearly a trot. I've never marched so hard in my life. As we came up the road, we captured a few of these miscreants watching us, and they babbled on about hundreds of men waiting for us up ahead. And then one of them from behind a barn snapped his weapon, and it flashed but not actually fired. And that was enough for Major Pitcairn. He had us stop and he had us load. We marched, and as we entered the town, we went up a long, slow slope, crossed a small bridge, and then up a slope. And as we crested that little hill, there was a meeting house. And behind the meeting house were, I must say 75 or more of these militiamen under their captain. 3 of our companies deployed, moved around the meeting house, and confronted them. Major Pitcairn rode forward on his horse and in no uncertain terms told them to disperse. He used some, language I would not repeat. But they did not immediately do so until their own captain gave them the order to disperse. They began to slowly turn, and at that moment a shot was fired. I do not know where it came from, but in a moment this area, it was filled with smoke, shot, fire, mayhem, bayonets, death. We killed 7, 8 of them, chased the rest of them away. It was mayhem until Colonel Smith arrived, found a drummer, and got us all back into order. We marched on up the road to Concord and got there at mid-morning. Colonel Smith then deployed us light infantry up to one of the bridges, and more of them further into the countryside looking for cannon and other weapons. We were at the bridge when hundreds of these militiamen came marching down off of a hill and confronted us. We retreated to the far side of the bridge. Again, firing broke out, and there were so many of them we were compelled to retreat. Number of men were killed right there, and we retreated back into the town. By this time, Colonel Smith decided it was time. we should retreat. We should get back out of here. We could not find all of that which we were looking for. We began down the road out of Concord, our company, the 10th Light Infantry, up on a ridge near the road. And as we came down and descended off of that onto the road, firing broke out once again. And from that moment on, it was like a gauntlet, with these militiamen in their skulking ways behind every tree, every stone wall. Damn, we had to stay on the road. We had only one way out of there. It was just at this moment that I took a ball right through this arm, right in the elbow, effectually disabling this arm. But I carried on, and finally, for the second time, I visited your town, going the other way. I can't say it was pleasant. At a tavern just to the east of the town, we stopped, and we were saved by 1,200 soldiers and 2 cannon under Lord Percy. He was the son of the Duke of Northumberland, you know, quite a genteel man. And there we stopped, and Mr. Symes of the 43rd, the surgeon's mate, looked at my arm, and he extracted the ball, it having gone through the actual joint and lodged within the skin on the other side. I'm sorry to have upset your dinner. He patched it, and we went on. But I must say, at that point, having had nothing to drink, nothing to eat, and from the loss of blood, I began to feel a bit faint. But we carried on, and we went through all of the towns back to Bunker's Hill in, I believe it was Charlestown. And we fought our way through there, losing dozens of men, but I believe we gave as good as we got. Now, when I got back to Boston, of course, I was not in a good way. The surgeons, I got back to my quarters, and the surgeons came to visit me, and Colonel Smith asked after me, and they bandaged the arm, and for the next several months, I must say that the surgeons would arrive and visit every 2 or 3 days and just ask, should it come off? I kept resisting. I changed the bandages frequently. I drained it. I did everything I could. And as you can see, it worked. It doesn't work very well, but I have it set so that I can rest it on a table and actually write my memoirs, which I have done. Now, I must admit to you that I called it the Concord fight, not the Lexington fight. I hope you'll forgive me for that. But it was quite some day, and it was actually later that year that I returned to England, having been dispatched to the additional company. I no longer perhaps had a career as a field officer, but I went on to become a country gentleman. Eventually, I have now lived out many of my days. I hope there will be many more. I've been able to put down my recollections, and I've been able to come here to tell you all about it. But 45 years ago, I was here, briefly, twice.